We'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today. I'm Dave Blake, the founder and CEO of Client Success. We're super excited to have our friends at Brainstorm with us. We have today Casey Trujillo and Todd Kirk, both with Brainstorm. And today we're talking about customer onboarding, cutting our time, the customer onboarding in half. And they're going to give us a digital playbook to use, which is super generous and super exciting. So Casey and Todd, how you doing today?
Dave, we are doing great. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, we're grateful to do it. Now we're all in Utah. It's kind of rainy and cold today in Utah for the first time this year. But how you guys doing today?
We're doing great, and we're excited to be here and to talk a little bit about this. And Dave, I thought we'd play a little bit of a game with you and with our audience today because Todd and I just recently got back, and that is real picture of Todd. That is that he actually
It's
grew
so
that mustache. It is just horrible, but it's amazing at the
I
same
did
time.
I did a poll on LinkedIn about the picture, and everyone said I should change my profile picture to have the mustache. So
I would
I
do
have
the
not taken
mustache.
surveys about growing the mustache back, but
I would do the mustache and I would add a mullet. I think if you did that, your game.
Well, Todd and I were speaking at a customer success event, and we wanted to get to know everybody in the audience. We asked some questions. So, Dave, I'm going to ask the question to you, and what
Okay.
I want you to answer is the way that you think the majority answered, not
Okay.
how you would answer, but the way that you think the majority of customer success managers would answer. And now these are customer success managers that were, small, maybe Series A, Series B, to some pretty large customer success organizations. Okay.
Okay.
So, question number one is, how would you describe your primary role as a customer success manager? And I'm going to give you some options. And in the audience, we'd love for you to put this in the chat also. So you also answer the way that you think your fellow customer success managers might answer. Okay. So you could choose relationship manager, product expert, customer advocate, renewal specialist, or product trainer. I'm going to go one more time.
Okay.
Relationship manager, product expert, customer advocate, renewal specialist, or product trainer. What did the majority say was their primary role?
Um, let's see. That's a good one. So product specialist. Say it one more time. Product specialist.
Relationship manager,
Yep.
product expert, customer advocate, renewal specialist, or product trainer.
Probably relationship manager.
Ding, 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 ding. Correct. Okay. Well done. So relationship manager was number one answer. About 41% of the users or customer success managers said that. Okay.
Okay.
Now, here's the next question, Dave. How many accounts do you manage as a customer success manager? Okay.
Okay.
1 to 10, 11 to 50, 51 to 100, 100 plus.
That's a good one. I'm going to go 51 to 100. But
So 44% of the people said they have 100 plus
oh,
customers.
wow.
Okay. So here's the question, Dave. I don't have 100 friends. It's okay for me to say, but I don't have 100 friends. Even if I had 100 friends, Dave, I don't know how in the world I could maintain a relationship
Yeah.
with 100 friends. Now, these are people that like me and want to be my friend.
Yep.
So, isn't it interesting, Dave, that a majority of people said that their main goal is to be a relationship manager, but the majority of them said that they manage 100 plus accounts. How's that possible?
It's not, I would say again, I heard a study one time that said after about 50 relationships, 50 individual unique
Yeah.
connections, it starts to degrade. So if they're saying 100 plus, that's double. I wonder if it degrades the relationship by double,
Mhm.
or I'm not sure.
funny little piece to add on to that, Dave.
Yeah.
13% of users said they had 50 to 100. So you
Okay.
had 13% plus 44%. You're well over the majority have at least 50. So even still, you're really, really high, even if you're going down to 50.
And it may be a question for another time. Has that increased over the last couple of years, where the
Yes.
focus in customer success, well,
Yes.
just in SaaS, has been efficiency and doing more with less, and because of
Yes.
the economic conditions. That would be an interesting study and interesting conversation.
Now, Dave, all this is leading up to why we believe that you need to steal our digital playbook. Like you need to steal it. We're okay with this
Yep.
because, again, we're pointing out right at the beginning, the data from you, or not from you, but from CSMs is saying, hey, my main goal is to be relationship, but I have so many accounts. And again, that would be magical if 100 accounts actually wanted to meet with you every week and they're like, yes, let's meet. We all know that that's not true, that it's hard to even get people on the phone with us, right? But I'm going to do two more questions with you because this is going to set this up again for this need for this digital playbook. So we asked the customer success managers on average, how many hours per week do you spend time training? And again, audience, please put in the chat what you think the majority of people said. Okay, less than 1 hour,
Okay.
1 to 3 hours, 4 to 6 hours, 7+ hours
A training.
of doing training for their customers, of doing product training for their customers.
I'm going to go with Christine. I'm going to say 7+.
7+. Okay. So 22% said that that's 7+. 25% we said between 4 to 6. So
Okay.
again, almost 47% of people. Now that's not including time in preparing for training. That's not sending out follow-up resources after
Yeah.
that. Okay, but again, we're relationship managers. Wait, how could we be relationship managers again if a majority of us have 100 plus and we're spending all this time in product training?
Seems difficult.
Okay, one last one, and then we're going to get into why you should steal our digital playbook.
Okay.
Is we asked this last question. We said, if you could only focus on one aspect of your job to drive renewals, if you could only focus on one thing, what would it be? Again, I want everyone to put in the chat what you think the majority answered. Building stronger relationships, improving product adoption, resolving customer issues faster, or providing better customer education. Building stronger relationships, improving product adoption, resolving customer issues faster, providing better customer education.
I'm going to guess that most people would say adoption.
53% said providing better customer
Oh,
education.
wow, great. I thought that would be that would have been my answer, but I thought most people would say product adoption.
I actually thought the same thing, Dave. So I was really shocked when I
Yeah.
saw that,
Yeah.
especially again because the perception for most CSMs is I'm a relationship manager and I'm spending a ton of time training, but they want better customer education for their users,
Yeah.
which I would guess most organizations don't actually think of the CS team as the people responsible for customer education, at least in a digital scale perspective, right? They usually have a different team that owns that. And that, regardless, is like that we think is going to move the needle the most.
No,
So
I agree.
this is the setup, Dave. Thank you for playing along with us. And this is why we have this webinar, and this is why we think this is so important. So important, in fact, I'm going to share my screen here that you should be seeing my PowerPoint.
Yes.
So you can see that one of the biggest things that we're a believer in is that you should steal our digital playbook. In fact, we are going to offer our platform that is the backbone of our digital playbook for free, Dave, for your client success customers. So I know that there's some people that are not client success customers. I would advise you to meet with client success and become a customer. If you are a client success customer, you will receive 12 months of our platform for you to use with as many customers as you want to create this digital playbook we are about ready to show you. That is, again, only
That
if you
is
are a client success customer.
wow, that is awesome. 12
Okay.
months?
12
12 months.
months. Okay. Because
Okay.
the data is telling
For
us
free. For
for
free.
free, no strings attached.
All right,
As
everybody.
as many customers as you want too.
Let's do this.
I think a lot of times people hear this and they're like, trial, 3 customers? No, like go full. We want you to go full bore with this bad boy.
So let's go through it and we're going to explain a little bit about this. What I'm going to do is, again, just try to reemphasize to you one more time the importance of why this digital playbook is so important. And then Todd's going to actually go through the experience with you so you can actually see it. Okay. So let's get started. So the first thing that we want to talk about is that this is something that we've had, this isn't our first time doing this digital playbook. We do this with TechSmith, QuickBase, Fishbowl, Microsoft, Box. We are using this with a lot of software vendors. So we want you to be a participant in this. So we believe that your digital playbook should be from, as Dave loves to say, when you sign a new deal to when you renew a deal, we believe that the digital playbook should be part of that. It should be in every component of what you're doing. And we don't believe it should be part of it. We believe it should be the leader. And let me give you an example why. So we're meeting with a customer, and they said, okay, in onboarding, we're always human-led. And we just don't know if our customers want digital. And so we said, okay, give us a little bit of information about onboarding. What does that actually look like? Well, we're pretty good. It only takes us an hour to do our onboarding. Okay. So you have to have a call. It has to be an hour. They said, yes. Okay. After that hour, how many times do you retrain other people in what you just trained in that 1 hour? And they go, oh gosh, we don't count, but it's a lot. Okay. So let's just pretend if we let out with digital adoption and the first thing we sent to the user was, let's get started on your digital journey. Let's get you onboarded with the software. And let's just say 50% of them started. And 50% said no. They just waited for that first onboarding call. You still had 50% of your customers that come to that onboarding call better prepared. So maybe that onboarding call is only 30 minutes. Maybe it's only 15 minutes. Maybe you don't even have to have the onboarding call. But no matter what you've done is you've let that person know that we believe in our digital experience because we lead with it. As you go through it, if you have a great experience, you're going to go, well, wow, that was pretty easy. Is this the same way I'm going to activate my employees when I tell them we have this new software? Is this the same way I'm going to do that? And you go, yes. And they go, wow. But guess what most of us do? We lead with humans. So when the customer says, okay, how am I going to educate all my employees now that it's all set up? Well, the only thing they know is human. And so now they want human again. And then you're like, oh, wait, we have this digital education that we can give to you. And they're like, well, is it any good? I want to talk to a person. So by making it part of your life cycle and leading it out, your customer starts to understand that, one, that was a good experience. And two, why wouldn't I do this, right? We're not saying it's one or the other, but we're saying this should lead because the impact of what it could have down the road along the journey is massive. Now, because we believe, and we all know, and we'd all agree, if I did a poll, I know everyone would agree with this, that training and adoption are correlated. It's not just correlation. I think it's causation, to be honest. Like the more I'm aware of something, it drives a desire within me to want to understand how to do it. And then I go and do it. And then I consistently want to learn more. So for those of you that are pro site change management certified like myself, you understand that that is the process for individual change: awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, reinforcement. Well, that is how we need to enable our customer to be able to do that. So we get to that effective adoption that we all want. Now, we understand that so much that every software vendor on this call today, you have 3 mediums in which you're trying to help your customer be better informed, to hopefully better train them, so they better adopt, right? And you have support services, onboarding, implementation teams, which are great, but it's a high cost because it's human, and it's low reach. You only reach so many people in doing that. So, of course, you have a professional services team, which is great. You might charge for that to your customers. You might not charge for that for your customers. And again, instructor-led training is phenomenal. It is the best type of training. That's why everyone asks for it. But guess what? You're only going to reach a small number of people. Usually, our data, and doing this for 14 years, is usually less than 10% of your organization will ever attend instructor-led training that you have. And then here's the other data that we all know is that forgetting curve, that if they don't implement exactly what they hear in that training, that 90% of what they learn is forgotten in the first week. Now, because we also do instructor-led training, we don't do it as much anymore, but we used to do a ton of instructor-led training for software vendors. The number one complaint about instructor-led training is it's too fast. The number 2 complaint is it's too slow. The other issue, even though I only reach few people, is how do I reach everybody with the technical understanding of where they're actually at? And that's why instructor-led training is difficult. Not only do I reach a small amount of people, but everybody comes into that meeting with different understanding of software and technology. Now, the most effective, the lowest cost for the highest reach is digital learning. Todd and I host a podcast called SaaS Therapy, if you want to look that up and join. And one of the guests we had was Andrew Carruthers from Cisco.
He
And do
doesn't
you know? Oh,
he
yeah,
doesn't
go,
get
Todd.
posted till next week, by the way.
Okay, it doesn't get posted till next week, so take a look for it on there. But one of the fascinating things that he said was two things. Number one, people want a digital experience. Your customers want it. They just don't want your poor digital experience. That was the first insight that he had. Is it's not that they don't want it. Do we all learn through TikTok? Do we all learn through short little YouTube videos that we're looking for? Yes, we all search for short information. We do that consistently. So why wouldn't we want it in our business profession? Why 90% of the time outside of business we learn that way, but for some reason in business we don't want it that way? So he just made that point of like your customers want a digital experience. They just don't want your poor digital experience. Number two is that Cisco, unless you're spending $100,000 or more, you don't even get a customer success manager. It is purely digital. And he meant that point is to say, we keep pushing the envelope at Cisco to say, how do we raise this higher if our digital experience meets that? So for us, we always ask the question, if you want to see how your digital experience is doing, if it's poor or if it's successful, we ask you this question. How many of your total licensed users are using any of those digital resources? Now, as you're thinking about that, there's going to be a couple answers. Number one is I don't know because I put everything on YouTube, and how would I ever know that? Well, that's a challenge there. If I'm working with accounts and I'm trying to onboard someone quicker, or we rolled out a new feature and I want people to understand that new feature, well, if I don't even know if anyone's looking at it, then how do I know if I'm successful or not successful, right? Data over emotions. That is something you'll hear Brainstorm always talk about, and we'll ask you those questions. What's the data telling you? How many people went to your instructor-led training? So out of the total licensed users, you had 5%, 2%. So you're concerned about adoption? Well, of course you are, because you're not reaching as many people as you want, right? So that's a good measurement stick, is just go in and look at that data. And then the second data point is what's the impact that education has on product usage, because product usage should get us to the business outcomes. So that way, when we're talking about upsells or renewals, we actually have good data points to point our customer to of, hey, if we do more of this, we should get more of X. Again, in that group, in that survey that we did, we asked everyone, does anybody know the impact of instructor-led support services, digital education? Do you know the impact on product usage? Not one person in that room raised their hand. So we believe there's 4 key pillars to your successful digital adoption. This is what your digital playbook should have. Is number one, it should be part of your process. So just like I mentioned at the beginning, when you onboard a new client, you should lead out. The first communication should say, let's get started with your digital journey. It's not that you're not going to have someone from onboarding and implementation call, but it should be the first thing that they see. When you roll out a new release and you do a webinar to tell everybody about a new feature or a new license type, at the call to action should say, hey, want to understand how you're going to educate your end users on how to do this? Look at our digital experience. And people should be excited about that. It should be at every moment of need for that customer. Number two, it needs to be microlearning, and it needs to meet the user where they're at. Again, we've done millions and trained millions of users digitally. If it's 90 seconds or less in digital education, 90 seconds or less, they have about a 78% completion rate. If you go to 3 minutes, it drops high 60%. If it goes to 5 minutes, it gets in the 50%. If you go 15 minutes or longer, you're down in the 10 to 15%. Micro learning is important, and the length and quality of what's in it for me is super important. The second thing it should do inside that quality and personalized, it should say, where do you want to start, user? What user persona are you? What things of these value props do you want to understand? Most software vendors believe that they want their person to go through a sequence. Well, guess what? The customer doesn't want to go through that sequence. I want to start where I want to start. Number three, it should enable your customer where they want to take ownership to be able to do that. They should be able to send out the communication to their users. They should be able to see if their users took training. They should be able to see if that had impact on product usage. They should be able to see the survey results along with you. One of the great posts that Todd Kirk has, follow him on LinkedIn, he has such great content, is he said, who buys a blender and expects the blender company to come out and put the fruit in, put the milk in, the sugar in, blend it all up, pour it, put it in my hand, and then help me drink it? But yet, we do that as software vendors every day. We don't ask the customer to utilize the blender. So this should enable the customer to do it in a very, very simple way. The last thing is, like we talked about, is, again, education for education's sakes. If it doesn't drive to a behavior change, which drives to product usage, which drives to business outcomes, if we can't show that impact, then you know what? Just people spend a lot of time taking some education. So it should be able to show that for you. So that is what our digital playbook is built on and what our software platform is built on. So Todd Kirk, who's our software advisory, our vice president of software advisory, he works with the software vendors like yourself to help create your digital playbook. So Todd, let's walk through an example of a current customer that we have, Fishbowl, and describe their situation. And let's go in and show a little bit of what this digital playbook would look like for the people on this call today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and if I could add one thing that I think is important when it comes to this digital experience, one of the things that I think is really just really critical to remember is that when it comes to renewal, people don't renew because they received value in the past. They renew because they anticipate getting value in the future. So one of the things you want any digital experience to do to inspire future action rather than to focus on kind of past capabilities. So just key thing to think there. But Fishbowl is awesome. They're like, think of a kind of like a simplified ERP for inventory management. They pretty much sell exclusively to small customers. So, they onboard approximately 150 accounts every single month. So not only do you have, a CSM who has to support well over 100 accounts, but they're always new and they constantly have hundreds going through implementation onboarding any given time. Each of those clients required somewhere in the realm of 4 2-hour calls to get implemented on the average. They had 20 implementation specialists just working with 30 or 40 accounts constantly. And so that's really hard. And they had lots of customers fall through the cracks. There was a great question earlier about what do I do with customers that just don't do anything? Well, their process was all human. They did have other resources, so they tried to create a digital experience, but it was really hodgepodgey. So they had YouTube videos. They had no idea if customers were watching them. They had a resource library that they knew nobody went to, which is great. And then they had a knowledge base that a lot of people went to, but they were really confused because it was a lot of long knowledge articles. That tends to be content that we feel like we can produce really quickly as CS teams. We're like, hey, I know how to write out documentation, take some screenshots, and then send a bunch of people a novel to go read. But that just confused their users. What that actually led to from a result perspective was about 110-day average for onboarding a new customer and going live. They had about 50% of their how-to questions or of their support calls were just how-to questions. So customers, it wasn't that they were having a technical problem. They were just constantly calling in being like, how do I do this again? I don't know how to do this again. How do I do this? And they have had a really, really bad renewal rate as a result because, like I said, there was lots of customers that never even got fully onboarded in the process. So what they decided to do was come up with a new plan. When we think about this playbook, one of the things that's really important is having a blueprint for success. One of the things that I think we tend to miss out on is that we don't start with a vision of where we want to go. They knew where they wanted to go. They knew what the current state looked like, and they wanted to get to a future state that they knew would be better, that they could go and transform. Then they put together a plan of what they wanted that process to look like and how they would drive adoption. And then they figured out how to scale it. So a good way to think about this is I want to go digital first because I can't afford to keep having just 20 people. All they do all day is answer how-to questions. I need to figure out how to enable the customer to do that better. And so they had to come up with a system and a plan for that. So that vision, plan, scale approach, I know that sounds really simple, but oftentimes we skip straight to the plan or straight to the scale, and we don't actually think through that entire process. So
Yeah,
what did that?
Todd, walk through that a little bit on the vision part of like, just
Yeah.
take the example of onboarding. Um, as you're working with customers and they're thinking, okay, I'm going to onboard my admin, get them set up. What would be some advice that you would give in that vision component?
Well, I think first you got to start with what does the future state look like from an objective perspective. So, some objective you want to get to or that you want the customer to get to. So, there's a business outcome that the customer wants, right? Let's say, client success, I want to have a better renewal rate with my customer base. I want to increase my touch points with my customers, or I want to increase their engagement with my software. You have these ideas of future states that you want to get to. Well, you should design backwards from where you want to
Mm,
be to from where you are today. And I think what we tend to do is we think conceptually really quick and we jump straight into design, but we haven't worked backwards from the end state that we want to get to. So that's, I think, is a good way to think about vision is think about your future state of where you want to be and then design backwards from it.
I think that's brilliant because as we think about what type of digital education should we create, you do this with your instructor-led training when you're thinking about onboarding, but breaking that down upon, okay, who might be the different types of users that would be involved with the admin setup. When we go to launch out to the users, what are the different user personas? What would we want them to do first? What are the business use cases that they would find interesting? And then that really helps you decide what type of content you create. What are the questions you want to ask? What are the survey questions you want to ask, right? So I think I love that, Todd, how you have this built out of vision, plan, and scale. It really sets up all of the micro learning that you're going to put along with it. So I just love this slide. I just wanted to hit on it a little bit more.
Yep. Now, their plan, which I thought was really smart, was they incorporated into their CRM system and said, hey, we want to make sure that users are automatically enrolled in a digital experience. We want to alert them proactively. We want the platform to re-engage those users, and then we want to track those resources back. And so basically what that ended up looking like is anytime they sold a new deal, the first interaction before they hopped on a call with any customer is it sent out an email to all the users. So jump to the next slide here, Casey. And the email basically, instead of saying here's 50 different things that you could do, here is the one thing you need to do, which is where do I start right now? I think one of the things that we struggle with when we go digital is we know there's a lot that the customer needs to know, so we tell them everything that they need to do right
Mm.
now. And instead of just focusing on like what's the one thing I need to learn about right now that's going to help me to be successful. So that's a key thing. And what's neat about this is as a result, the open rate for their new customers, super high, right? Almost 60% of unique users open that first email, and 70% actually click through into the experience, which is really awesome. And that's across all users, not accounts, right? Which is even more incredible to think about when you're having tens of thousands of users go through this experience every single year. And again, what's a key thing to think about if you're going to do a digital experience, you want to make sure that if you are having an email that has a call to action, that it's only one call to action, right? Go do this one thing. And that especially when it comes to training, because otherwise, if you'd be like, here's 50 links for help articles to go check out, then just people get, analysis paralysis. They can't decide what they need to do. So if you're going to send somebody training, send them one thing.
Todd, I love that. Just kind of digging in there. How do you figure out what the one thing is? Is it an adoption thing or is it a value thing? Does that make sense? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
like any ideas of like what should we focus on that could be the one thing that we encourage them to do right from the beginning?
Cool. So at least with Fishbowl, what I loved that they did is the very first video, they sent a video to the user, and the first one is a why video. Why is this going to matter to you? Why do you want to go through this? How do I get people excited? The second thing that they did, I call it the tour video, is like a, get to know Fishbowl. And what's neat about that is typically when you create a digital experience, we jump straight into the how-to too quickly. And even like what we don't do is we give people orientation. Like, could you imagine if I'm like, you're on a cooking show and they throw you into the kitchen for the very first time and they say, bake a cake, but you don't know where the pans are. You don't know where the flour is. You don't know where the spatulas are, right? So what's really important is that first experience needs to be, here's why this is going to be beneficial to you, and then let me introduce you to the kitchen. And it's not, I'm going to get into the specifics about how to plug in the blender and then how to add your ingredients to it. It's here's where the blender is. And then you move on, right? So first things first is you want to give people orientation. But this is the other part that's great is sometimes you might know exactly who a user is and what they need. So you give them the why and you give them the orientation. But what's really cool about this is they actually started by asking the user, okay, you tell us what you need to know right now. So the first thing they asked is, hey, are you an admin? Do you need the admin training? Do you need role-based training, or are you looking how to solve a specific problem and you want to do a topic-based thing? Like give me a use case that you want to go solve. Well, what's great is let's say the user says, I need role-based training. Well, they click role-based training and then it says, what team are you on? Maybe I say I'm on the sales team. And then, okay, what's your role on the sales team? Well, I'm a sales manager. And then based off of that, it takes me directly into that sales manager course. So the whole thing that's really important is that if you are going to provide training to people, don't just give them all the options, make it a conversation. Like that, I think is a really key idea in this whole thing. You as a CSM, you know you're better than the digital experience generally because you can ask for input from the user and then make recommendations based off of what they tell you. And any good digital experience needs to take input from the user and then make recommendations just like a human would, or it's not going to work.
Mm. So Todd, I love this. We're thinking about just onboarding a new admin into the Fishbowl platform. But obviously, as I'm going out to a user, so the admin says this was fantastic. I love this. Now the admin says, well, how do I train my employees? And you're able to say, same way. You're going to send out
Yep.
this communication to your employees. It's going to ask them what their role is, what use case, and then it's going to give them very specific education according to what they want to learn. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. In fact, that's a key part of this is we don't generally send someone to an academy because we want to make sure that the customer feels enabled. So by giving the admin a portal they can push to their end users, then they can build that into their processes. That same idea that we're talking about of like, you need to have a process of when the moment in need matters for the customer. Well, they have moments in need too. So that cascades down, right? If you want to create an experience where the customer takes ownership, that's a real key. So now what's cool is let's talk just real quickly about results here, Casey. I think we could probably skip the next slide just for time here. This one's cool, just as far as the idea of people who were interested in data. Most people wanted to go through the admin experience, but what's cool is a lot of times the first time somebody goes into a portal, you think it's for admins, but about a quarter of their employees who went through this actually were hopping in and picking, I want to just show me how to do this for my own job. And great. Now we just skipped all the admin configuration and implementation stuff. Well, what's cool is 76% of their accounts had admins go through this experience. So think about that for a minute. They're onboarding 150 accounts every single month, right? So you're talking 76% of their users actually engaged with this. And they didn't just like start it, which is really common. On average, they watched 60 videos. So that's an hour of investment on average, which is incredible. So you're talking about thousands of users spending at least an hour in this platform. But here's the thing that I think is really important. Casey mentioned this before from a digital experience perspective, you don't want to measure, did the user watch the training? You want to measure the impact that it had. Well, it actually bolstered their retention by 14 points. They reduced their go live time by 62%. And 57% of their users were onboarded without ever needing human involvement from their team. So imagine again, all they were doing before was answering support calls, 50% decrease in support calls. And what's neat is 87% of those users said they were sufficiently trained to actually do their jobs, which is a really key thing here, right? You're trying to implement a system that gets people to change their behavior. And all of that was getting reported back in to really be able to demonstrate that success. So I love that whole idea and that whole concept of how do we make it easier for the customer to find the resource that they care about and then learn how the software works as quickly as possible. And the cool part about this partnership that we're doing with Client Success is not only are we going to let you use our platform if you want to try to build these digital experiences for free, but we've also built out an experience for Baton. So Baton is awesome, guys. I love it because there's two sides to the implementation, the onboarding for any customer. One is there's a lot of tasks the admin have to do, and you need to make sure that you track and help them know what their expectations are so you can hold yourselves and the customer accountable. Baton's awesome at that. And Brainstorm is this tool that's really enabling them and getting them motivated and excited and seeing what's possible with these tools so that they feel more comfortable tackling that problem. And Brainstorm has built out a component to the platform to be able to teach you how to use Baton. We helped them build it, by the way. So this is my ugly mug. But we put our money where our mouth is. What we do is we start with a human-led video that introduces the value of the platform. Then we start with this, how does Baton work? What are all the parts of it that you should learn? How do you go in? And we orient you. Again, 2 minutes, that's the whole thing. And then we might ask you something else, right? Hey, do you want to know how to get logged into Baton? Well, maybe you already know. Why do I need to show you how to log in if you've already accessed it? Because Baton does a great job onboarding. But if you're like not sure how that works and you want to see, we give you the choice. So the idea of this experience is we want to make it possible for you to really quickly get up to speed. And then you say like, nah, I'd rather skip that onboarding video. Okay, no problem. We'll send you an email and you're done. So like part of this whole experience is how do I make it as easy as humanly possible for you as a user to get the value out of the software really, really quickly. And then you're done. So that's available to anybody who's a Baton wants to use use Client Success and Baton. We're right there. We're just going to give that to you too.
So great. Super grateful for Brainstorm for being so generous to our customers. We're excited about the partnership. As you can see, it's a natural partnership there. Casey and Todd, a couple questions that the group had. I'll start kind of backward. Arthur said, what if the new user receives a first email at a bad time and it's not urgent for them to launch into onboarding at the time? How do you manage the right timing? Is there a way to figure out when to send the first email or?
I love that. I think it's a great question. So the couple of things, right? One is when you lead out with a digital first experience, part of the problem historically is, well, we don't track the engagement with those resources. So if we're sending out an email and then they don't do anything with it, well, do we know why, right? Why didn't they do anything? And so that's a really key thing. For us, what we'll do is we re-engage the user. So if they didn't engage with that email in that first week, then we send them a follow-up. Right? Or we remind them that they have this thing that they need to do. So we can basically set up engagement features to re-engage the user if they haven't. But the other piece of that is you got to get better at being able to anticipate timing. So, ideally right after a deal is closed, the user's going to be motivated. And if they don't engage, it's because they either didn't see it or they got distracted, not because they weren't ready. And if they aren't ready, then ask them and give them a resource that tells them that will re-engage them later. So there's a lot that you can do on that front, but every single digital experience always comes down to data first. And too often we send out communications into a black hole and we're like, they didn't do anything. Why didn't they do anything? So we need to get better at being able to tracking and understanding why they're not doing those things.
Todd, the only thing I'd add to that really quick, Dave, is the automation they have built in. So if you send the first communication, they don't interact, 3 days later, this happens. If they did interact, they open it, but they didn't do something, then I'm going to prompt them more with, hey, let's get started back on your journey, right? So being able to have it be automated and then how they've interacted with that communication. And then of course, play off of that is also very, very important to that.
That's great. So we've got Austin who's saying, what if you have somebody who goes MIA, they're during onboarding, they're not engaged. Any ideas of how to re-engage people? I know that these you've touched a little bit, but any other ideas on re-engaging even key stakeholders who just maybe they're just busy, maybe they're implementing a lot of, or they're doing a big strategic project and they had the best intentions. Any tricks on re-engaging disengaged key contacts and customers?
Yeah, so I'm going to start by saying I think not all touch points are created equal. And I think one of the things we think about is we say, well, they're not engaging. I need to just engage them more. I'm gonna send them more communications. I'm gonna try to get them on a phone call. And what I see tends to be a blocker there is that people don't want to engage with you as a CSM if you're not bringing value to the table, especially because you're one of dozens of CSMs that they might have to interact with because they likely buy multiple software solutions. So you're not their only vendor, right? And so one of the things that I think is really important to consider is how do I provide value that's going to motivate them to get on the call? So having some level of data or insight or interest that's going to remind them of what they need to do is going to be important. A lot of the times people don't engage either because they're not aware or because they don't want to. So you need to ask yourself, is it because they're not aware, they missed the message, or is it because they don't find what you're providing is valuable to them? And so you need to reestablish the fact that you're going to bring something that's going to make them perform their job better, or empower them to make the case to their leader or whatever that thing might be, right? So I think you always got to start with those 2 points. Usually a lack of engagement comes because the user doesn't know why. And so how do you make that better? Is it an awareness problem or is it a desire problem? And it's
Dave,
usually those are the first blockers.
yeah, I've seen it too, Dave. Is I might get disengaged because there's a point and again, we're just staying with this onboarding theme, but again, this if you roll out a new feature set or a new upgraded license or new licensed users, but in the onboarding experience, when someone goes MIA, they might be stuck because they need someone in IT to go do something for them, or they need somebody else to go do something for them. So one of the things you want to build out, going back to Todd's thing with the vision, plan, and scale, is in the vision, you got to say, okay, where are people getting stopped? Well, if they're getting stopped because I got to tie this into my CRM, well, guess what? Inside of that education flow, it says, okay, now we need to get this connected. What type of system do you have? Do we need to forward this on to the next person so they can go in and take their education? You make it super simple for the person to send just the information to that other person to go get what they need to set that up. So some of the things that we do wrong is I need help from somebody else to get the system set up. I send them a link. It goes to some education resources. That person has to go try to find what they're looking for. Versus if you just make it part of the process, it goes to that person. They just click on the link. They get exactly what they need, and it goes through it. Again, in little micro learnings, because 83% of people say they want micro learnings. They see it's 90 seconds or less. That person engages. So again, going back to that Andrew Carruthers, is people sometimes go MIA because the experience that they need to go through to get the right people on is just hard. So
Yeah,
I think that would be the other thing I'd add.
no, I agree, and I love the concept of these micro learnings, and one of the things
Mhm.
that I think people should look at is like how do you get these small wins that drive that momentum engagement
Mm-hmm.
and these wow moments, right? I know there's a concept that Disney does. It's like creating these wow moments, these little ones along the way that keep people interested, engaged, and coming back for those. And sometimes we think wow moments need to be these big milestones when sometimes it's just unlocking something small that they're like, oh, that's awesome, that helped me here, or I see the value there, and just kind of building on those experiences. So
Mhm. Well,
uh,
and Dave, if to picky off of that, because Caesar
yeah.
threw in a question around making it scalable to build out these types of experiences, a lot of people don't do it because they feel it's daunting. It's easier to write technical documentation than it is to make like a good 1 minute video that's clear. Casey and I just did a podcast about that on SaaS Therapy. I think that launched, was that today or last week, Casey? But
Today.
regardless, we have some really good advice on how to build scalable content that you can maintain. Check that out, and feel free to engage with me if you have questions. That's a topic I'm really passionate about. How do you update and maintain content and avoid duplication and content that just feels clunky and outdated really quickly? And there's some good, I have lots of good advice at that, but it's probably a whole nother webinar's worth of a topic so we probably shouldn't go in too deep on it. But
Yeah, now Caesar asked a good question. What are scalable approaches to creating, maintaining, and editing these videos as a product changes and features
hmm
are added? Is that
yeah.
does that become a never-ending thing, or is there a platform that could help you do that?
Yeah. So good. That's a good plug to talk to me after this. I'm happy to give you some great
Yeah.
advice on what to do there. But I will say just a couple of tips that are helpful really quickly. One, create videos that are self-contained. not, if you're making microlearning, don't make them feel like it's really a 2-hour training that's all related and everything has dependencies. So make your videos be self-contained. Speak in second person. Do clean screen captures. Keep them under 90 seconds. And you have a system to be able to track when those assets were put in front of users, how often they're being engaged with. We have this framework we call Tov Love here, which has to do with kind of like how long it's been since something's been updated, how often it's getting used, and how valuable you think it is to the user. You actually should evaluate your content's value based off of those 3 things and whether or not you should update it. So maybe that's a system of, it's been 6 months, but it's not being watched very much, and it's not really that important of a feature. Well, then maybe you can wait. But if it's been 2 years and it's still being watched by 50,000 people and, it's a really critical idea and it's leading people to incorrect conclusions, then maybe you should evaluate updating it. So having a system and a framework for how you choose what to maintain and just how you design it in the first place will go a long way in ensuring that it has a better life and can be more effective for your customers in the long term.
Dave,
that was my like 1-minute
yeah,
summary of how
yeah,
I
and I'm going to give a 1-minute endorsement of Todd. Todd managed just Microsoft, and you think about the complexity. Someone, I think it was Michelle, asked, "How do you adjust more complex platforms?" SharePoint. Talk about the Power Platform and building, low code automation. Those are complex things. Todd managed that for Microsoft, and think about how quickly Microsoft comes out with new things. Todd's going to give you his best practices and how to do all this, and that comes along with getting you onto this platform to provide that. So Todd's going to give you share everything with you, because again, we know that we can free up your time. We know we can help you with those stats that we talked about at the beginning. It comes back to having a better digital experience, and Todd's going to share all that with you if you decide you want to be part of it.
Very cool, guys. All right. Your final give us your final summary. Like what are the 2 or 3 takeaways that you want everybody to take away from this webinar today?
Todd, you go first.
Well, first thing is I love Casey mentioned Andrew's comment in our podcast from next week that's really been sticking with me, which is, it's not that people don't want digital first, it's that they don't want bad digital experiences. And so the first thing is it's actually less daunting than you think if you have the right tools to make it happen. And we're happy to help you there to make that easier. So that's first thing. Don't be afraid and feel like this is going to be insanely difficult. It's actually not as hard. I think building out the experience for Baton took us about 3.5 weeks, and that included planning. So like you can do this pretty fast. And that's a key thing to be aware of. And then second is like, just take the time to start with the vision of where you want to be. Don't accept the current state. There's a lot of conventional wisdom out there around what makes a good digital experience. And the results that we always get is because every organization follows conventional wisdom, but there is a better way. So focus on where you want to go and then design a thing that's going to get you there, and you'll outperform the market. And the standard's pretty low, right? Most people, digital experiences, very few users engage with it. So you can jump over a 10% bar pretty easy. I'm confident, because that's where the market average is.
Yeah, Dave, mine's just data over emotions. You're going to say to yourself, my customers don't want this. They want this. They want this. They want this. Just go look at your data, the amount of time you're spending every week in training. How is that driving product adoption? How is that getting people more informed? You're going to go back to, I just can't scale. I just don't have enough time. Use this free offering to go test and then look at the data. And if the data is better, well, then you do more of it, right? So look at these different areas. Everybody has really small ARR accounts that they're like, we do all digital there. Let's test there. Maybe you came out with a new AI module that you're trying to upsell people. Well, let's go there. Like, it could be just all onboarding. Experiment, but let data decide. Don't let your thought process of, oh, just people won't want this. Again, they just don't want your current digital experience.
That's great. That's great. I think my takeaways: break it up into these micro learnings and micro content. Helps you maintain it, keeps people engaged. Data over emotions, and measure everything you can. So, Casey, Todd, thanks so much for being on. We're really grateful for the Brainstorm partnership. Client success customers, you heard it here. you get Brainstorm, access to Brainstorm for 1 year for free, just for being our customers, to be able to help drive your digital adoption and digital engagement, both with your customers and internally with your team for the software that you've purchased. So reach out to any of us, Todd, Casey, or myself, and we'll make sure that you get that offering. For everybody else, we're grateful. We love to share either platform. If you're interested in Brainstorm, reach out to Casey and Todd. We'd love to introduce you to Client Success and our new product, Baton. And we're grateful for everybody to come today and be with us today. I will say that we are watch for more webinars in the future. This and all of our webinars will be on our resource page, and so we will continue to add more and more content there. But we also just want to be a great partner for you as you build your customer success strategy. So reach out to us if we can give you a demo of Client Success, or if we can help in any way. I'm Dave Blake, founder and CEO of Client Success, and we're grateful that you would be here, spend your time with us today. Watch for more content coming, and have a great week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.